Welcome to the 902 Podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain Vik, and I want to thank you for listening. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media at LSO Nebraska on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 Podcast. We are here today in studio to talk to none other than Colonel John Bolduc from the Nebraska State Patrol. Thanks for being here, John.
My pleasure, John. Glad to be here.
And Sheriff Terry Wagner, Chief Deputy Houchin, as always.
Good afternoon.
Happy Friday, right?
Yes, it is. And just before we were on air, we were talking.
Somebody's going hunting.
You're on your way out the door this weekend.
It's true. It's a long weekend. I've got a friend coming down from Minnesota, and we're going to go try to archery hunt some wily whitetails in southeastern Nebraska.
Awesome. Sounds good.
But you're not going to hurt them, are you?
Well, it depends on your definition of hurt.
Okay.
It's harvest, right?
We're harvesting
Yes, that's the key word.
From our mother, the earth.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk all things State Patrol here in a minute, but why don't we talk about you a little bit first? What led you here? Where are you from originally, John, and how did we make it to the Nebraska State Patrol?
Wow, that's a very long and convoluted traveling. But I'm originally from Minnesota, born and raised in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities area. I went to school in Bemidji at Bemidji State University. As you all know, it's the academic powerhouse of the North. And ended up.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I've learned something.
In Bemidji, it's a Native American term. It means Harvard of the North. So anyways, for those who've been there, they know that.
Good.
So got a degree in criminal justice and actually got my first job in law enforcement in my hometown, which is Maple Grove, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis. Spent a dozen years there. Patrol officer, training officer, investigator, sergeant. And then I went on to become a police chief in a small town. And I thought I was going to be a small town police chief my entire career and traded that in for a little bit bigger job in central Minnesota. And then when my wife and I became empty nesters, we decided to move someplace warm. And I ended up taking a job as a police chief in Southern California with the Port of San Diego.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Lincoln, Nebraska. And I was like, you're way off there.
Yeah, there's a little
It's a little warmer than Minnesota.
side
Yeah.
detour.
Further south, yeah.
Although I am fond of saying that the winters in Nebraska are much shorter than Minnesota. The last 2 years, make sure I mark it on my calendar, I was fishing in my boat in Nebraska on February 20th. That would have never happened in Minnesota, trust me.
Yeah.
So anyway, after being at the port for several years, our kids, who are now adults and out of college, settled in the Midwest. And so we decided it was time to come back. And I began my search for a new job in the central part of the country. And it just so happened at that time, this job was open. And I threw my hat in the ring, and I was fortunate enough to get it. And so I've been here for 6 years, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Awesome. Well, we're glad that you had some time today to spend with us. I know you're a busy guy, but appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about the Nebraska State Patrol a little bit. What is the State Patrol, and why do we have one?
Well, great. So, the State Patrol was established in 1937 by an act of the legislature. And in those days, it was called the Nebraska Safety Patrol. And that evolved over time. And I forgot the year that it transitioned to State Patrol, but I believe it was in the 50s. I'm certainly not a historian, having only been here 6 years. But really, we're the only statewide law enforcement agency that has jurisdiction over, pretty much everything within the state, with a few small exceptions. And, we do a little bit of everything, which is what makes it a great organization. And when I'm giving my recruiting pitch to prospective recruits, I talk about that. There's a great deal of variety. Just when you think about it geographically, you can get hired here as a trooper. You can work in a very small town, which I've done in my career. You can work in a very big town, which I've done in my career, and anything in between. So there are lots of opportunities to establish yourself, and you can specialize. You can become an investigator. You can become a canine handler. You can become a SWAT team member. You can become a pilot. You can do all kinds of specialty things. that may not be available in a smaller agency. Not that one is better or right compared to the other, but it just has those opportunities. So it took me a little while to get used to the fact that we do a little bit of everything. And I was often in my first year or so here, caught myself going, wow, we do that too? I mean, we outsource technology to smaller agencies through programs like TRACS and MOC, and those in law enforcement will understand what I'm talking about. But we really try to be a value add to our local partners across the state and try to be a resource. We don't want to be the agency that comes along and says, hey, we want to take over. We just want to be there as a resource for Nebraskans across the state, which include police departments and sheriff's offices. And I think it's a big responsibility, and our folks take that role very seriously, and I'm very proud of them for that.
You know, we just went to the Nebraska Sheriff's Association, Police Officers Association conference this week in Kearney, and I can tell you, you know, without State Patrol, many of those smaller agencies, sheriff's offices, police departments, just couldn't function without help from the patrol, and I know that they appreciate it. So,
well, I appreciate that, Terry. In fact, I was just sharing with my team. I do a weekly newsletter, and I included in there that my time at the conference with the other sheriffs and police chiefs was really great. And several sheriffs and police chiefs came up to me from across the state and just thanked me for something awesome that our team did, whether it's simple as reconstructing a serious crash, which a lot of small agencies don't have those resources, supplying aircraft support for a complex mission, or helping with an investigation, or sending one of our specialty units to help them out. And it was a moment of incredible pride for me, knowing that our folks are making a difference all across the state. Mm-hmm. So it was a very valuable experience for me.
You know, when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you make a traffic stop and it starts to go bad, you don't care what uniform shows up. You're just glad to have them. And that's one thing that's just awesome. And I know those out in western Nebraska just love to see, you know, when they need backup, because they may have to call somebody out of bed to try to get there, and you guys come and show up and help out and sometimes just save the day.
It's true. In fact, I was talking to our new sheriff in Rock County, and he was explaining that sometimes it was as soon as he could get his pants on and his uniform and get out the door, he's the backup for one of his teammates or somebody from a neighboring county. And I really appreciated that perspective, because I actually did that job for a few years when I was a chief in a small town. I literally was the closest backup, and I was home in bed sleeping. So I really can identify with those needs. And it's a two-way street too, though. I mean, those rural partners help us a lot too, because our troopers are out there doing their thing. They're enforcing traffic laws and handling crashes and arresting DUI suspects. And our local partners help them out a great deal too. And it's an invaluable partnership, and I really appreciate that.
All of us in this room have, at a time in our careers, worked for, you know, a local jurisdiction. So, you know, city, county. When you made the jump to a statewide law enforcement agency, so, you know, a lot of states have state police or things like that. Was there anything that surprised you, or just anything that was a big adjustment for you?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, John. There were a lot of adjustments. I spent, 30 some years in local agencies, working for cities, or in the Port case, it was a special jurisdiction, but functioned very much like a city. So coming to a statewide agency, number one, this is a big state.
Yeah.
And whoever decided to put the Capitol in the southeast corner, I'm not sure that was a great idea, but, So I get a lot of windshield time. And the thing that I found to be a challenge for me personally was a lot of my team I only see maybe twice a year. And I've always worked in a police department, even in San Diego, where we had 150 or so folks. I got to know everybody. Here, I just don't have that ability or that luxury. I mean, I do the best I can, but so that's different. So
Yeah.
you really have to rely on your other leaders across the state to really carry that mission and that vision and translate that down into action for the troops on the street. Now, sometimes things get lost in translation, and I think the biggest challenge is consistent communication. Mm-hmm. And that's one where we've really tried to be intentional. We're certainly not perfect, but we've really implemented some things that kind of help break down those communication barriers.
Yeah, well, that makes sense to me. I mean, I can't imagine I'm sure you're traveling, a fair amount, just with active operations and cases, let alone your organizational stuff too. So, yeah, big state. With that, and your jurisdiction wise, what is kind of the primary jurisdiction of the State Patrol? I mean, we think of it, as in Lancaster County, we have different roles and things like that, but our patrol jurisdiction is the county outside the city limits of Lincoln. So do you have different jurisdictional priorities, or how does the State Patrol view that?
Well, again, that's a great question. So really our jurisdiction is the entire state of Nebraska, and there are some limitations within recognized tribal jurisdictions,
okay,
right, where we have some limited authority or that granted or shared with the tribes, but those would be exceptions. So, literally from downtown Omaha or downtown Lincoln to very rural areas that hardly ever get patrolled, that's our jurisdiction. But the primary focus, we can break that down into a few categories. Number one is traffic safety. It's obviously a very high priority for us. Most people think of state troopers, and they think of a trooper on the interstate helping with the flow of traffic, or heaven forbid, getting pulled over and qualifying for law enforcement intervention. Lots of that going on.
I like how you say that.
Wow,
Yeah, right.
that was the most politically correct way of saying that I think I've ever heard.
Some people qualify for more intervention than others.
Yes.
But we don't give out those tickets; they are earned. So, but that's what most people think of. But in our more rural areas, we're doing a little bit of everything. And when you think of similar agencies, I guess technically you would say we're a state police organization because we handle everything. We don't have a separate Bureau of Investigation. That's all housed within the State Patrol. A lot of the specialty operations are within State Patrol, where you might think of some of our neighbors, Kansas, South Dakota, where they have a specific highway patrol function, and then a separate organization handles criminal investigations. It's just two different ways of doing it, and we just are aligned more like a state police organization, like you might think of Pennsylvania or New Mexico or Arkansas. Those are probably more similar to the way we operate. But all in all, at the end of the day, it's how do we provide great public safety service to our citizens, because that's what they pay for. And so however you choose to align it, the mission is still the same. We want to make sure that Nebraska is a safe place to work and to play and to raise a family, and to the effect that we can contribute to that success. I think our folks are all in on that. And I can tell you, to a person, everyone is proud to serve Nebraska.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the hashtag that you guys are using, the Patrol the Good Life, and definitely kind of captures that essence. Scalable. We try to do the same thing. I mean, we're trying to keep Lancaster County a safe place to live, work, and play, and that's just on a broader scope to the state of Nebraska for you guys.
Absolutely, and frankly, I'm very thankful that you guys have that mission, because I'm a proud resident of Lancaster County. I live in the city of Lincoln, so our friends at LPD and you folks here do a fabulous job of making this city and this county a great place to live. And since it's my adopted hometown, I'm very thankful that we have competent and effective law enforcement here in this community.
Well, and you know this as well as we do, but it's the people that make it happen, and you certainly have a fair number of people working for you across the state. How many employees does the State Patrol have?
So we have about 710. That fluctuates a little bit, and that includes sworn and civilian. So we have 482 authorized sworn staff, and of course we have some vacancies, which I hope I get a chance to plug that here.
You sure do.
Shameless plug. We are hiring. NebraskaTroopers.com. So that's www.nebraskatroopers.com. We are in the process of hiring right now, of course, and with about 65 or 67 vacancies as of today. That represents about 12% vacancy rate. Unfortunately, that vacancy rate hits a little higher in the western part of the state, so we're really putting a lot of our efforts into recruiting folks who live there or who want to live there, and fill some of those much-needed vacancies out there. But it really speaks to that team effort. Where we have vacancies, our local partners are stepping up to help us out. Unfortunately, the double whammy that occurs in some places, sheriff's offices are shorthanded, and we're shorthanded in the same area. And so we really have to work hard together to accomplish the mission.
So if I'm a young lad, which I'm not anymore, and I wanted to go to the State Patrol, and how do I know where I'm going to go, when I start this application process or any of that? You're talking about it being in western Nebraska, needing people, and let's just say all my family's here in the east. Is there things you guys do with that?
Yeah, great question, Ben. So yes, there is. We do take that in consideration. So during the hiring process, there are several steps where we have a chance to communicate, where our needs are, where the desires are of the prospective recruit. And, when it comes right down to the end of conditional job offers, that's the point at which we have that conversation. And maybe about a fifth of the people that we hire will say, hey, I have a family, a spouse, I have a need to live in this area. And most of the time we can accommodate that. Probably about another third of our folks are what I would call free agents, if I was going to use my sports analogy, where they're like, hey, I just want a job and I want to serve and I'll go anywhere. And of course, we value those folks highly, and we make sure that we put them in the area of highest need. And the good thing about our agency is once you spend 2 years in a duty station or an assignment, you have an opportunity to transfer to someplace else. Perhaps you start out in Omaha and you say, this big city policing isn't really my thing. I'm going to move to the Sandhills. If we have an opening, you can move out there, and vice versa. So there are opportunities once you get on board. And we really encourage our prospective recruits to kind of look at the big picture, the many opportunities that are out there over a career. You don't have to accomplish everything in the first 5 years. There's an opportunity to learn and grow,
right,
and try out new things.
Well, and you think about it, your salary as a trooper out in the Panhandle is a little bit different, and probably goes a little bit further than it does here in Lincoln and Omaha area.
I think that is a great advantage because it's the same salary across the board based on your years of experience and which assignment you're in. But certainly with the wage increases that we've seen in the last few years, it's a good wage, and I would agree it does go a little further in some parts of the state than it does in the others.
How about civilian opportunities? Do you have much for civilian vacancies right now, or how are you holding up there?
We're at about 10 or 11 right now, which is pretty low. Mm-hmm. But we do tend to have more turnover. A lot of those jobs are very entry level. We used to refer to them as clerical type jobs, but more administrative type jobs. And so you do see a lot of turnover there. So there are opportunities for folks who are like, hey, I'm interested in public service. Perhaps law enforcement really isn't for me, but I want to contribute. And I just had a chance to talk to many of our civilian teammates just in the last 2 weeks who are serving in CID, or they're doing background checks, or they're doing fingerprinting. And they're part of the system. And I always make sure I reinforce to them that even though that work might just seem administrative and mundane, it's really an important component to the criminal justice system, because we're the agency that's tasked with keeping the records of criminal histories and making sure that the fingerprints match up with the right criminal histories and the right data, because that's information that's going to be used 20 years from now in making decisions. Prosecutors, judges, probation officers are going to rely on that information, and we want to make sure that we keep the right people out of certain professions because of background issues, and we want to make sure we screen the right people in something as simple as daycare licensure, which the state legislature passed a few years ago. We want to make sure that people who are doing that important work have the correct background. And so accuracy of records, really, really important, and it might be among our lower paid positions, but really an important part of the criminal justice system.
Yeah, the people in the background, you wouldn't be able to do your job without them. And that's the one thing everybody needs to remember, to the public and in our agencies.
Yeah, there are a lot of folks that really make this whole thing work.
Yeah.
And that's why when we look at, 40% of our staff are civilian teammates who just do outstanding work every day.
The State Patrol has an academy. You've been a few different places over the years, currently out in Grand Island right now. Does a civilian go to the academy for a length of time just like a trooper would, or does that kind of depend on the position?
No, actually, all of our civilian jobs are trained on the job,
Okay.
Whether it be in a troop area in Scotts Bluff or North Platte or here at headquarters. All of that training is accomplished on the job as they come on board. It might be a dispatcher, it might be a fingerprint tech, it might be a evidence manager. Any of those jobs are trained on the job wherever that need is.
Okay. And so what does a Trooper Academy look like then in 2023?
Well, we're just wrapping up an academy right now in 2023, so we'll have a small but powerful group graduating here in December.
Good.
There will be 7, and that will probably be our lowest graduating
Holy
class.
moly, that is low.
It's a low number. We started with a dozen, and we've had a few injuries and a few folks that just didn't quite finish it out. But we're looking at starting another academy back-to-back starting in January. And we had a good recruiting pool. We had 240 applicants. The last time I checked a few days ago, we had 73 who were still in the pipeline. And we know that there's just natural attrition. So if we start the next academy with about 20, we'll be really pleased. And that's perhaps more optimistic than some folks have tolerance for. But we're just going to kind of chip away at these vacancies. We're not going to have a camp of 50 like we did in 1991 or 92. That's just isn't happening anywhere in the country right now. We're seeing smaller numbers, but good quality. So we just need to get more people interested in law enforcement as a profession, and then we can start to see all of us starting to fill those vacancies.
Yeah, that's one of the things, and John knows it as well as any of us. You know, each step that you take one of those recruits through, you lose about half of them each way through the written and physical, and then through the backgrounds and then the polygraph and the psychs and all those, and yeah, it whittles it down pretty quick. But yeah, one of the big things we hear at the sheriff's office, you know, we weren't going to drop our standards, and I'd rather go short, and I'm guessing that's probably where you guys are too, than put the wrong people in these positions.
I've had that exact conversation with many folks. I would rather have none than the wrong people, and it's as simple as that. We ask our troopers and investigators to do some really important things. They're trusted with information that only they will be exposed to. They go into people's homes and businesses and are exposed to very sensitive personal information from folks in the public. We have to have a trusted relationship with the public. So we have the wrong people or people who, for some reason, violate that trust. That just can't be tolerated, and that's the expectation the public has of us. So we have to maintain those high standards.
Yeah, and the sad thing is you know, if other agencies do that, when they get a black eye, the whole profession gets a black eye, as we've come to find out.
Yeah, when they lower their standards and take anybody that is breathing. Yeah,
that's a challenge for our profession when that does happen. Yes.
Well, we'd all like the numbers to be higher. I guess the silver lining, as I look at it, is it's much easier to spot good quality talent right now. So if there's somebody listening out there, you know, if you've got good character, you've got good work ethic, law enforcement, whether it's at the county level, city level, state level, remains an excellent profession to get into and a very rewarding career. So if you're interested in the Nebraska State Patrol, again, that was www.nebraskatroopers.com.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
With that, let's move on a little bit to some of the cooperation that we have between agencies, and there's a number of examples over the years. Just with our training, I mean, I know that we've gone back and forth, and we've trained with your folks have trained with our folks, and I think that'll just continue to be something in the future that we both benefit from.
Absolutely. You know, I always say public safety is a team sport. I mean, law enforcement's a team sport. We have to work together. There are areas of expertise that the sheriff's office has that we don't, and we'd like to think there are areas of expertise that we have that we can share and training together, working together, being parts of different task forces, sharing technology, having everybody have their own piece of the pie and being siloed. It just doesn't work in effectively serving the public. So we all have to work together. And certainly we have a great, long, trusted relationship with the Sheriff's Office, and we're proud of that, and that certainly precedes me and probably precedes all of us in this room. But to make sure that we continue to do that and continue to merge our resources so that we can better serve the public is really a best practice, and I think that something that our teams take a lot of pride in.
Yeah, we were actually sitting in this very room 2018, 19, and we were talking about civil disorder stuff, and we always thought about it in the lens of, if the State Patrol ever called us and needed help with a, pipeline protest or something, those were kind of the things that we thought of at the time of civil disorder. And then 2020 happened, and lo and behold, we were calling you guys for help when we ran into some of those things. So that's another very recent example of some multiple days of cooperation that took place.
Well, none of us are big enough to handle the whole situation. I know the sheriff's mentioned that several different times, that if we don't team up and work together, it's just not going to happen. The State Patrol probably has enough people, but they may all be coming from Scotts Bluff and all these other places that take a little while to get there.
Well, and I think the public benefits, when we all collaborate and work together, share resources when we can, and like with the civil disorder from 2020, everybody's involved because we've still got normal operations to maintain. It really is the public's best interest, financially and otherwise, to have us all work together and play nice, so.
Absolutely. I think it was stated earlier, folks don't really care if they're in a crisis, what color uniform or what patch is on the sleeve. When they need help, they expect help, and they pay for that help. And so we want to be there, and it really just makes a lot of sense to continue to collaborate and work cross-discipline as best we can. I'll throw out one other great example. During the huge disastrous floods in 2019, I think Lancaster County was the only county that wasn't underwater. Mm-hmm. All of our resources were gone across the state in the areas that were affected. So we relied on Lancaster Sheriff's Office and Lincoln Police Department to handle things that normally we would handle, but the store was empty. All of our folks were out up north, over east, helping out with just unprecedented natural disaster. And that's something that the public didn't necessarily see. If there was a crash on the interstate, you guys handled it. If there was a need somewhere, it was just covered. And so that scenario gets repeated over and over across the state, and that's the nature of the collaboration that I think the public expects from all of us.
Well, when we do our media briefing, I don't know how many times we say, yes, and the Nebraska State Patrol and Lincoln Police Department were there with us doing this whatever incident it is. And I think it's extremely seldom that you don't say that in major events, that everybody pitches in and helps, because there's certainly been some times on some major accidents that we just ran out of people, and you guys come in and help out and, help with the traffic control and doing all those kind of things.
Right. And that's, again, I think that happens in every county. And again, that's, I think, an expectation.
The Air Wing is something that the State Patrol is blessed to have, and we certainly benefit from that.
Greatly.
As being that statewide agency, you've got a little, you're maybe better positioned, I'll say, to have some of those resources. Sheriff, when did we disband our manned Air Wing? Is it?
Well, when I started, we had the old Bubble Bill helicopters, on MASH.
Right.
We had one. Lincoln Police had one. They were civil defense at that time, emergency management. We're giving out those military surplus assets and from Korea, and I think that's how we got those. And we had military, we had guys who had come back from Vietnam who were helicopter qualified, so we had ample helicopter pilots and helicopters. And then that, those hourred out, and it was just too expensive to maintain them. We got a fixed wing, and I think we sold our last aircraft in 2021. I'm sorry, 2001.
Yeah, just we talked about it on the 9/11
the day
episode.
after 9/11.
Yeah, we were selling our
We
airplane.
sold our airplane. Yeah.
So that's probably back to the staffing thing. I mean, it's hard enough to staff a law enforcement agency, let alone an air wing. That's a very specialized area, both with equipment and with personnel.
It's cheap though, isn't it?
Well, compared to operating a diamond mine or something like that, it is, aircraft are expensive, and operating them, that is an expensive venture. But the good news is we are in a good position to provide that service, not only for you folks, but for folks all across the state. And there are applications where that aircraft has really come in handy and literally has saved lives. I think of, again, back to the floods, number of people where the aircraft were able to spot people in danger of losing their lives, and were able to call in resources to those locations that we would have otherwise not seen, to effecting rescues using the helicopter as an asset. We're very fortunate. We have several pilots who have many years of experience in the military and decided to continue their career of service in the State Patrol. And so we were able to leverage that training and that experience that they've already gained as public servants, and say, hey, here's an opportunity for you to continue to serve the public, not only as troopers, but as pilots. And if you know pilots, you know that they are passionate about the art of flying, and they really can geek out on all things aircraft, which I'm not a pilot, I'm not an aircraft expert, but I really do appreciate how much our pilots love what they do and see themselves as a force multiplier, not only for our team, but for other teams across the state. We've worked joint ventures with LSO, with LPD, with Kearney PD. I believe we did a selective in Madison County a couple of weeks ago using our aircraft. So really we're able to go out, and whether it's something as simple as traffic enforcement, where we can see violations from the sky, or finding a lost child, or a lost Alzheimer's patient, or someone like that. And that aircraft really allows us to serve the public in unique ways that we simply can't do from the ground.
One of those force multipliers, and you mentioned just the sharing of resources and trying to make things go further. We've got a new program now that we're exploring with the State Patrol, being tactical flight officers.
Yes. Yeah, I got to talk to some of your pilots, and yes, you're right. They're very excited about what they do, and they like showing off their helicopters and the toys that are in there and all that. And we're real excited here about our opportunity to I'm glad you came up to the sheriff and I and talked to us about that, because we asked for your guys' help a ton, and for us to be able to give back is great. And it's just another opportunity that we can give our people. And
so how would you describe that for people that are listening at home? Because that's a new program.
It is, and it's a great idea that we copied from the Ohio State Highway Patrol, where they have a agreement with the city of Dayton in Ohio, where they have worked collaboratively together. And what the colonel from Ohio suggested that, look, let's bring on TFOs, or tactical flight officers. So that would be the person who rides in the like the co-pilot seat, who operates the cameras, operates the infrared cameras and things like that. And the pilot's job is to fly the aircraft, and the TFO, their job is to handle the law enforcement operations in that aircraft. And so we do that with our own people. So we usually would have two pilots, or a pilot and a TFO from the State Patrol. So that means I have two people in the air, which means one of those people isn't available on the ground to do that work. So if we partner together with LSO, for example, and have one of your folks in the jump seat with us running the cameras, it's a force multiplier, because your people know the county inside out and backwards more so than we do, because you spend all your time here. And having that person riding co-pilot really makes the whole team better. And so that's the theory that we're operating under. And we're just in the beginning stages of putting that together. And I know that our pilots, and certainly I am looking forward to having some of your outstanding deputies in that aircraft with us to help with those operations. And that way, that frees up one of my folks to be doing other things that may be needed in another part of the state or another part of the community.
Well, it's not eating up their flight time hours on that, so it helps on that end. So if there's another emergency, you don't have to look at each other and say, we're out of time, we can't do it.
That's right. And that is a restriction, of course, and that's a safety factor, is our pilots are limited to the number of hours they can be in the air. And that's appropriate, of course, because we have to do the mission safely. And partnering with the Sheriff's Office, we're going to be able to, again, extend some of those hours by using your resources in combination with ours. And we're really looking forward to that partnership.
And we are as well. What else new at NSP? Just nothing going on? Phone's not ringing?
Well, our dispatchers would probably disagree with that.
Oh, okay.
The phone is always lighting up. There's plenty of new things. We have some big projects that are in the works. A lot of those are improving facilities. We are in the process of doubling the size of our crime lab, and that's that crime lab provides service to all 93 counties in Nebraska to analyze evidence and prepare.
Free.
And that is free.
It's free. That's
the taxpayers pay for it,
Right.
but local agencies do not have to pay the State Patrol for those services.
Right.
And that model is in existence in some states, but in this state, it's natural that the state assumes that responsibility so that it doesn't have to be spread out, across some agencies that frankly just don't have those resources. So the crime lab is undersized, and so we're addressing that as a result of appropriation from the legislature. And that's in the kind of the middle of the planning stages at this point, and we'll be turning dirt very soon on that project. There's always, facility upgrades and purchasing squad cars and new cameras and things like that, just like any other law enforcement agency would do. But one of the things that we've been working very hard on is leadership development and succession planning. A number of our senior staff, including myself, will be reaching retirement age in the next couple of years. So getting ready for the future really involves helping other folks get ready to assume positions of leadership, because that's the only constant in all of our organizations is change. People come and go, and it's our responsibility to put in systems in place that will help people be successful, as we transition from one leader to another.
Absolutely. We've talked about several things that the State Patrol does. If there was, a citizen in Nebraska or Lancaster County that came up to you and said, we've got all of these agencies. There's a police department, there's a sheriff's office. Do we really need a State Patrol too? How does the State Patrol make Lancaster County and Nebraska overall a safer place to live, work, and play?
Yeah, those are actually legitimate questions, and they should be asked. We want to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. For example, the county operates a jail. We don't operate a jail. Mm-hmm. We do things that allow us to really focus and become experts on crash reconstruction, for example, where it just doesn't make sense for every city and every county to have crash reconstructionists. It doesn't necessarily make sense to have people in small counties be specially trained in homicide investigations when they maybe have a homicide once every 20 years. So those are the expertise and resources that we can bring to bear on those events that just are rather rare, but do require expertise in order to provide the service to the public, to keep the public safe. In Lancaster County, it's a little different because certainly the Sheriff's Office is large enough and has enough repetition in certain events that you guys are as expert as we are in a lot of those things. But it wouldn't necessarily be a great use of your time to be enforcing traffic safety on the interstate when you have many, many miles of county roads that need the same attention. Mm-hmm. And so there is some overlap there. But again, we've spoken to the issue of collaboration and working together. It's not uncommon to roll up on a scene of a complex crash or a complex investigation and see Lancaster Sheriff's Office, LPD, NSP, even other counties if it's on the county border. And again, that speaks to the collaboration and working together. When the alarm goes off, when 911 is called, or a trooper or a deputy or a police officer on the radio says, I need help. Help is coming.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter, again, the patch on the uniform. What matters is that the problem gets solved and the public is served.
Well said.
Yeah, like you said, you don't have to go very far out of Lancaster County to where some of these agencies are small and don't have that resources, but bad things do happen, and they deserve the same quality law enforcement investigation as anybody that lives in Lincoln or Omaha.
I would agree with that, and we don't have to go very far. Where we have a 1 or 2 person sheriff's office, and they're doing the very best they can with the limited resources they have, and that's where we can come in and stand next to them and assist them through whatever challenge they're facing that day.
And I'm sure they're glad to see you.
Yeah, and like I said before, we get a lot of kudos and a lot of thanks for sometimes just being there, and we may not be the the end all. Sometimes it requires more resources than even that, and but it's really the effort and working together that I think brings about the right outcomes for the public.
Colonel, Sheriff, Chief, any closing thoughts?
I just I just appreciate the relationship that NSP has always had with the sheriff's office, and we work together great. We make the most of our resources, and even though sometimes we get our toys a little bit quicker than you do,
You had to rub it in.
If people need it, they're talking about a Bearcat.
Talking about an armored vehicle,
vehicles.
and yeah.
So, those are another things. I've been with our tactical team a long time, and we've trained with the State Patrol, and we've certainly gone to different areas with our equipment, and we're more than happy to be able to repay you guys, especially since when we scream we need a helicopter in the air and all that, and anytime that we could be the resource, we're more than happy to do it. And it's all about keeping the public safe and keeping our sworn personnel and whoever's out there safe, and whatever we can do to do that, that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Well, Colonel John Bolduc, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for everything that you and your entire agency does, and thanks for joining us today.
Well, it's been my privilege, and on behalf of the entire team at Nebraska State Patrol, we just want to thank you and Sheriff Wagner for being great partners. It's really an honor to work with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks for coming
Thank
in.
you.
We just want to thank everybody for listening in today. Be sure to check out joinlso.com or nebraskatroopers.com if you're interested in career opportunities with the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office or the Nebraska State Patrol. Also, make sure to subscribe to the 902 podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts for all of our episodes. You can reach out to us on social media at LSO Nebraska or via email. Drop us a line at lso@lancaster.ne.gov. Thanks for listening.